What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and the Doctor Who saga mission, quest continues in the lead up to our 200th episode. Yes, we went with Winona on the last episode. We've got the American view, but now we're back in old Blighty, and I've got one of the many sort of stalwarts of the Comics in Motion crew, Stephen Ray. How you doing?
I'm very good, brother. And A, it's always lovely to speak to you because you're a joy to talk to. And B, one of my favourite subjects and obsessions, the good doctor, the time traveller, the hero, and the show, Doctor Who.
I'm very looking forward to it. Yeah, you and I think you and I have a very sort of similar history, didn't we? You got like 2008 Dig, got Doctor Who. We're very sort of it's a typical it's a good solid British upbringing.
Oh,
I think.
absolutely.
In those early 80s years. Yeah, but you've just off air, you have shown me your credentials, if you will. That's not a euphemism. You have all the DVDs, everything. You've got the BBC releases, every episode.
It still exists, plus the ones they've animated.
I was going to ask you, got the animated.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, what do you think about the animated ones? Because I've watched a couple of them.
Well, obviously, the BBC doesn't have money to throw at stuff they deleted years ago, but I would rather have any Patrick Troughton, William Hartnell episodes, even if they're animated, over not having them at all. Yeah. And the fact that fans have been dedicated enough to record the audio from those shows, and the BBC's cleaned up and they sound pristine.
Good. Yeah.
So I could one day have every episode once they decide to animate them all. So that just makes me happy because why, oh, why, BBC? Why did you delete them all? And people just think it's Hartnell and Troughton that were deleted. A lot of the early John Pertwee ones were as well, and they only existed in black and white, and they've been recolorized, and you can't even tell unless you watch all the special features. So, yeah, I'm just glad to have them, mate.
Yeah, different era. But I watched a couple of the Troutman ones on the animated, where they sort of and you're right. I think it's one of those where you go, yeah, it's not cinematic animation.
That's right.
But it still works. Like it feels, it feels like Doctor Who. I really enjoy them. So, and you're right. I think, but I also think, as you say, it goes to show the sort of the dedication of the fan base as well. In some cases, that people will do that sort of thing, and it has a dedicated fan base. If a rocky history, let's be fair. But yeah, it's.
Rocky is putting it mildly. I mean, I don't know if you're aware actually, but in the 80s, the head of the BBC openly said online that he hated the show and would do anything to get rid of it. Hence it going on an 18-month hiatus right in the middle of Colin Baker's run and him only getting 2 seasons and being the only actor to be sacked from the role. And then it returning only for 3 seasons, very short seasons with the wonderful Sylvester McCoy before it was axed completely.
Yeah. It is. It's a real sort of oddity because I know that the ratings were sort of on the decline and stuff, but they were actually to highlight they'd been on the decline and they were actually on the increase especially with season 26. Yeah. So yeah, it is. But and even as you were saying before about the deletion of those early episodes, the way the BBC worked, like they only had a limited number of tapes on which to tape things, so they had to delete stuff to tape over it to do new TV shows and stuff. So they didn't really have the archive. Or the digital archive that they have now. So, yeah, there was not that sense of home media and legacy that there obviously is today.
And back in the 60s, no one ever expected anyone to want to rewatch stuff. They just thought, put it out, it's new, it's done, bin it. And that was the mentality back then.
Yeah. No, it's funny. It's a bit like, and obviously, the BBC were sort of famous for it because one of my favourites was Quatermass.
Oh, and wonderful show.
Yeah, and the original Quatermass Experiment has only got like 2 episodes that have been, So it's a real shame. But we get the others, and so yeah, it's a fascinating sort of thing of the history. But I mean, there was the great sort of documentary drama that showed about how it all came about and that sort of thing. And I went back and I watched a couple of the first Doctor, the Aztecs, and I think and then there's one of the other ones I watched. And what I
I
find
can
really
give
fascinating.
recommendations for you.
No, because there are a couple I would go back and watch.
Yeah.
But I do find it fascinating how it starts off as an educational program. That was the intent.
Exactly.
And it sort of maintains that for quite a long time, but really starts to sort of increases the entertainment and stuff and shifts over time. But you definitely feel it in those early episodes. What are your thoughts on the first Doctor, that first iteration?
Because he starts off a nasty, crotchety, selfish old man. And by the end of the third season, he's almost the Doctor we know today, stalwart champion of the oppressed. And there's a massive switchover season by season as he relaxes and calms down, learns to like his human companions, learns from history, and he does start off pretty unlikable in much the same way that Colin Baker and Peter Capaldi's 6th and 12th Doctors do. But I like that.
Yeah.
It gives you something to grab onto and watch the character become who we love today. And then, of course, that amazing decision to recast him and the story behind that's absolutely fascinating. But I learned to love the first Doctor.
Yeah, it is. I like this unintentioned character arc that he has. Because I've seen the sort of one of the ones when Julian and I for Story Out of Time and Space did a story from each of the original classic Doctors. And one of the things I wanted to do, just as a side note, was every episode where that led up to a regeneration. So
Best ones to watch usually.
Yeah, I was always fascinated. Okay, well, what caused that regeneration? And they sort of dramatize it in the docudrama, but you do kind of feel it when you watch that last episodes of Hartnell, where you're like, oh no, it does feel.
Imagine being there in 1966, no internet, no spoilers, and you see someone you've been watching for 3 years turn into someone else, and you think, what in the name of Scaro is happening here? And suddenly we get a new, fresh-faced Doctor who's 15, 20 years younger and very, very different, which wasn't the original plan.
No, this is one of the we're used to, characters being portrayed by different actors. We've got James Bond, you've got Sherlock Holmes, Batman, all these characters being played by multiple people in multiple different iterations, all very often very different. But Doctor Who is like the only show that really embraces that and is sort of like
it's all one person. Yeah,
it's all one person. It's it's almost like the Grant Morrison approach to continuity, where it's like it all happened. Like it's never.
I love that.
Yeah, it's all encompassing. It all matters. If you want to use a slogan, it's all connected. But it must have been kind of brave. Well, it was kind of brave, wasn't it?
Incredibly brave.
Yeah.
I mean, if Troughton had failed, we wouldn't have the show today.
No.
And the fact that he said no, because I don't know if you're aware, again, it was originally called rejuvenation, not regeneration. So what the BBC's plan was for Troughton to come in and say he just like 15 years younger, but play the character the same way. And Patrick Troughton said no. Hartnell allegedly also said, Patrick Troughton's one of the finest character actors this country has. Listen to him. Trust him. And he had all the intelligence of the first Doctor, but a spry wit and an incredible sense of humour. And he was a little bit scatty and a little bit doddery. And he brought that eccentricity in, which has been maintained ever since. And I honestly believe that if he hadn't done it his way, Doctor Who, at least as we know, it wouldn't exist today.
Oh, well, yeah, I agree. I don't think it would.
He's every bit as important as Hartnell in the show's history for me.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it's that thing of those first rounds of decisions that set those things in motion, and yeah. I mean, Troutman is an interesting one. Troutman's an interesting one because I like the things I've watched. I like, but I would say, I've seen some of the stuff I've seen of Hartnell is fine, but Troughton feels like the first
Yes,
Doctor,
totally agreed.
where I'm sort of like, oh,
This is Doctor Who.
This is Doctor Who. Yeah,
Totally.
yeah. Yeah, so the show obviously took a bit of a swing with that, and then it sets it on the run, and
Oh yeah.
It sets in motion an awful lot of kind of different kind of
Not half,
interpretations.
mate.
Yeah, because it goes from there to black and white. You said Pertwee.
My first Doctor.
I was gonna say, is that your first Doctor?
My first
Pertwee?
Doctor, yeah.
Yeah.
I was there for the regeneration from 3 to 4, so I saw very little Pertwee. But well, I read more Doctor Who before I even watched any, so I had a bit of a weird introduction to the character. So, but the first one I saw was John Pertwee. Yeah.
I'm trying to think. So John Pertwee is what years? Who came in?
70 to 74.
Yes.
5
okay.
years, 5 seasons.
Yes. So that's where you get the sort of more. He's an odd cat. I'm trying to think because I watched him. And you think it's not quite. He's obviously got the big ruffles and all these other things, but he's also kind of macho in a sort of.
He's the Bond of the Who's. He's the 60s, 70s Doctor Who. Yeah, he's the action man, the Venusian Aikido scientist and action hero Doctor Who.
Well, it's
he was very different.
No, it's the first time where because it was more ground based, wasn't it? It was more earth based and all this other stuff. But they introduced a lot more action and horror, really, I think.
Oh, totally. That's when it started to become even more scary.
Yeah.
And that's one of my favourite aspects of the show.
Yeah, because I forget which one I watched. There was one that had a nuclear base and there was all these monsters, and I was like, oh, this feels like, not so much to put money in it, because it was never quite that, but it definitely felt like it was turning a corner again. I just loved his costumes. I just this is like Austin Powers, but not, but taking it legit.
Yeah. Well, it's like William Hartnell's first Doctor says in the classic 3 Doctors when all 3 of them got together. Oh, so you're my replacements, a dandy and a clown. And you couldn't have said it better, because that's what they were. But they're all one person, and that's what makes it hilarious when 2 and 3, who are the same guy, bicker and argue constantly. And it's just pure magic. Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'm into, because we've talked about the first 3, and we could go through them one, but we probably will. We'll definitely touch on others. But one of I'm sure it's in the black and white ones, but there's the actual scene of, or is there an actual scene of Hartnell stealing the TARDIS?
No, that doesn't come until years later in the 12th Doctor seasons with Clara.
So that's where they show that.
You find him on Earth, which, funnily enough, iPlayer doesn't have the first story arc because the writer, in his infinite wisdom, kept the rights. So you can get it on DVD, you can get it on home video, but it's not on iPlayer. The first story, you meet him in the junkyard in Totter's Yard in the East End, living in the TARDIS with his granddaughter Susan. And he's already here. And you don't get the explanation of Time Lords and running away and stealing the TARDIS until the second Doctor's final adventure, the War Games.
Which is where the
Time
Time
until
Lords
that point. Yeah. Amazing story. One of my all-time favourites.
Because the thing is, because we're used to, with modern Who, I think, we're used to, modern viewers are used to the Doctor sacrificing himself in some way, which is sort of instigating the regeneration.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the case with Troughton. Troughton was like, you've been a bad, bad boy, and you've been caught out.
Forced regeneration,
Forced regeneration to become Pertwee. But this is the idea, and this is something that came up when I was talking with my previous guest. Ever since then, they've been trying to sort of articulate this idea of the Doctor's always running, or the Doctor's always doing this. And sort of they're trying to capture him as sort of the essence of his personality. And he's like the scamp, isn't he?
Totally.
The way I see the sort of anti-authoritarian, all that sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I'm going to throw this out just because I think this was sort of where I want the conversation to go a bit with you, Steve. I'll leave out Shooty for now because I don't think that's a different thing to talk about the future.
Love him.
He's great, but
I
I think
love him.
I want to sort of get to the new
Yeah.
era in a different way because it will come to this. So I sort of see you got classic Who, new Who, all right?
You see, for me, it's one show.
Oh, it is. But
Yeah,
I'm going to give you a
yeah.
division, and I'm going to try and explain this to you. Right? So this is what I wanted your thoughts on this. All the original Who's, right, that 1 to 7, right, maybe even 1 to 8, but let's say 1 to 7 in particular, they are representative of the era
Oh,
in
totally.
in the sense of up until like McCoy, the Ace calling him the professor all the time.
Oh, love it.
That he is he is like a dandy and this scamp, but he's almost like aristocratic.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? Like he
yeah.
totally believes that he should be there and can walk into a room. He's often sort of just you know commands respect instantly, but
Mm,
he's almost like an aristocrat. He's like an upper class, like he's representative that like British.
totally.
He's that sort of like the and this is one of the things I like it's one of the reasons I love Capaldi because I think Capaldi sort of comes in this
A
similar
return
vein
to the classics.
in
Absolutely.
a similar way.
100% agreed.
But Danny Pink calls him out about being the bad officer. He's a killing officer. That's what,
Mm,
which if you've ever watched Sharp, another great TV show and
mhm.
series of books, is that idea of he'll send you in to die. And I often think about that with the doctors, those first doctors, where never intentionally, because he will do the work and stuff, but there'll be people that end up dying in the sort of the
Well,
revolution
the
or in the
first
task.
Doctor is the Doctor that had most companions die out of all of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what does that tell you?
Yeah. But I feel that's what I'm saying, exactly that. But then we get we get the change. We obviously we get to learn more about the Time War. But from 9 onwards is this more sort of like let's say working class. That like he's stepped away from that aristocratic kind of officer and becomes this sort of the younger scamp. And I feel that Eccleston is the most in conflict with that. And then
Oh, completely.
then Tennant becomes that the impish, scampish, working class kind of person, and then so on and so forth. I don't know. It just that's how I feel for me that there's these two eras where it's sort of like if there's the Time War in the middle, if you're taking it as continuity, is like before he's full of confidence and that the Doctor
Almost arrogance. Yeah.
totally complete full of arrogance, but then beyond that he's full of anger but fear of his arrogance, and so his regenerations are almost like I don't want to be seen as that aristocratic kind of character again.
Well, watching your entire world and everyone on it die is going to have an effect on a person. And I think that also, like we said about Hartnell's first Doctor and the 3 years he was in the show, that by the time we reach Christopher Eccleston, whose, again, performance was masterful, and if he'd have failed, just like Troughton, again, it would have been all over.
Yeah.
But Eccleston killed it, knocked it right out of the park. And I was extremely disappointed that he only stayed for 1 season. But if you think that his episodes were twice the length of McCoy's, he actually did 2 seasons of what would have been Classic Who when it finished. But he had grown over the 900 odd years he'd been alive and realised that, yes, people he loved had died. And the joy in those 2 amazing episodes, The Empty Child and The Doctor Dances, where he says, just this once, everybody lives. I jumped up and punched the air as a grown man. And Adam, my cub, who, because of my influence, is a dedicated Whovian like I am, was only 2000. So they were 10 when that aired. And the first episode scarred him for life because it was truly bloody terrifying.
Yeah.
But the second inspired him and has carried on doing so. And for a show to do that, to terrify you, inspire you, entertain you, is down to that incredible format where if you've got a blue box that can travel anywhere in the universe, anywhere in time, you can tell every kind of story. And that's the power to me of Doctor Who.
I think that it's funny you say that because I went back and I watched a couple of the Eccleston ones because I hadn't revisited them for quite some time, and I was very much like, yeah, I remember them being good, but like
a little shaky because there
It's
was
finding its feet again. It was a brand new era, brand new audience.
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you definitely feel that. You definitely feel that in that the BBC were clearly nervous.
Oh God, yeah.
They were like, "We've put money into this. We're really pushing for it. You know,
And
we've
it was
gone
still a
for
show that millions of people hated.
oh,
It had a dedicated fan base, but it was still a show that people thinking, "What are they bringing that back for?"
oh, exactly. Oh, shaky sets
Yeah.
and bad acting. And so no, but what I watched a couple, and I watched three of them. But you know, I sort of watched an early one, a middle one, and Bad Wolf, the last episode. And for exactly what you said, actually, one of the things I noticed is like it starts, and this is what I want to get to when we get to shoot it. It starts kind of silly. That first episode, you have
The bin eating Mickey was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Great fun, but ridiculous.
Yeah. But even but the first, because all the plastic, isn't it? And it's the
Autons,
the Autons and that sort of thing.
A Pertwee enemy.
Yeah. And so you're like, okay, but I'm on board. And there was still a little bit of that. But then, like you say, when you get the Doctor dances and what was it? It's the two-part.
The Empty Child.
The Empty Child. But the Empty Child, forget the Doctor dance because that's the sort of the resolution and the good bit. But the Empty Child, the kids with the gas masks on. Are you my mummy?
Oh my God, that was terrifying.
Yeah. But the one I watched,
Dalek.
No. The one I watched for the Eccleston one is the one I just chose them at random. I was like, I'm going to choose that one. So I remember them. But the one I watched that kind of surprised me, that felt both, it was kind of like, it was a little bit clunky, but worked, was when they go back and Rose meets her dad.
Oh, yeah.
And it's all trapped in a church, and there's the time.
The Reapers.
The Reapers, thank you, yeah.
Mm.
And I was just like, exactly as you thought. I was like, this is kind of brave. Like they're really sort of playing with some of the ideas here, that other shows just can't do. And you know, bringing Eccleston in, who was renowned mostly for quite heavy dramas and you know,
stage actor.
Yeah, stage actor. Like, you know, he brings a gravitas to the role that definitely holds that in place. And again, that last episode, you know, the goodbyes of the Doctor is always, you know, it's the line he says, you know, Rose, you know, you were brilliant, and you know what, so was I. And you're like, yeah, you bloody were. And it is kind of sad. But again, one of the things I think of, and I've been to what you think on this, because you're right, Eccleston. If Eccleston, if he'd have stumbled,
vitally important. Yeah,
if he'd have stumbled, like it wouldn't have gone any further. And I do feel bad now, knowing, you know, he's obviously got a different. He's got his statements about what happened during the year or during the filming and stuff, and it's obviously a sore point for him, which is tragic, and you know, a real sort of shame that he feels that way. And he was going through some stuff at the time, but like, you know, it worked, and you know, he contributed to a massive fandom. But again, I feel just like with Troughton, if Tennant had been a stumble, it'd be the first season that was a fluke, and we've lost that Doctor, so now, you know, who's this
particularly for people coming in brand new with Eccleston who didn't know what regeneration was, and to see at the end of episode 13, for again this guy that you've been following and slowly falling in love with, let's be fair, you did, suddenly become someone completely different, but hang on, it's still the Doctor. And what was brilliant about it was both Rose's reaction and Jackie Tyler's reaction, because they were our eyes, or the eyes of a new audience members into the whole process. And that hadn't been done really that well in the original series, because it just happened without explanation and then became part of the show. But Russell Stevens was very clever with the change from Eccleston to Tennant to show, yes, he's different, but in his heart, in his soul inside, this is the same man. And he pulled it off masterfully.
Yeah. Because Tennant is, I think, you know, often we'll get to favourites.
He's the most popular Doctor in history.
He's the most
There's no
popular.
doubt about it.
I mean, he's the one that took it international.
Because his era was probably the best written and produced.
Yeah, I'd say so. The most consistent, most definitely the most consistent. One of the things I think, you know, and
this is what I'm interested. I'm interested for your thoughts as well, because we call it New Who. I do see it as different. It's the same show, but different eras. Let's put it that way. And I think we're now into a third era.
And different ethos and
Yeah, exactly
feeling to it as well. Much more fast paced.
Yes, and that's no bad thing. Things change, times change. Do you see though, when you look at Eccleston, and we'll go through all of them, Eccleston, Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, Whitaker, and so on. So those ones in particular. When you watch them, I know you see it as a single show, but like, did you ever go, "Oh, that feels like the performance," or they're showing some not just Easter eggs, but in the performance, you'd be like something that David Tennant did. You're like, "Oh, that feels like the same Doctor as Pertwee or Davidson or McCoy or whatever." Did you ever feel that with any of them, where you were like, "Oh, that feels there"?
David Tennant had a lot of Peter Davison in him. And obviously, again, makes sense. He's a few years younger than me. So while I grew up with Tom Baker as my Doctor, the Fourth Doctor, I was already 81. So I was already 11 when Peter Davison came in.
Yeah.
And again, he was so radically different from all the guys that came before, because they were grown men, mature men. And all of a sudden, we've got a 29-year-old running around as the Doctor. I mean, it brought a bit of energy to it, but I don't think, and again, it's just personal taste, I don't think there's ever been a bad Doctor. But he lost some of that, like you said, gravitas.
Yeah.
And I feel a little bit the same about Tennant, because on stage, I've seen him on stage and he's wonderful. But in everything I see him in on TV and film, he's literally just different shades of Tennant. He never really grasped me as the Doctor, apart from with a few lines. And again, that's more Russell T Davies's writing than Tennant's acting. Like when he goes silent and threatens the headmaster when in the Sarah Jane episode School Reunion and says, "I will stop you." And that felt like Pertwee to me, like when he goes all calm and steely.
Yeah.
But on the whole, he was a lot more bouncy, vibrant, energetic, running around like Peter Davison, who again is one of my least favourite Doctors, even though I love them all.
Yeah.
So, but he did definitely, because he's a huge fan, and like me, he's gone back and watched them all and probably owns them all as well.
Oh, I'm sure.
And for that, I respect him and love him, because he went in knowing his stuff. But he was still too Tennant for me until the last specials, actually. Last year's specials, he was a lot more Doctor. And I'm glad that they brought him back for those, because he, for me at least, smashed it.
Yeah. Well, he played it slightly different, but he felt like he'd aged. He felt like he'd aged into it.
Exactly.
It's interesting you say one of the things that you mentioned there about when he says quiet. He goes quiet, and or one of the things I felt with all the Doctors, in the latest or let's say the modern iteration. One thing that I don't think is there in all those previous Doctors, but starts to materialize a little bit in McCoy.
Yes,
is a kind of
dark
like
Doctor with the secrets.
It's like a simmering anger.
Totally.
That's just sort of like, he'll be sort of like a bit goofy, and he'll be jovial, and you'll be confusing, and he'll be like, I love McCoy. McCoy was my first Doctor, because I love him. I'm born 81 and was old enough to start watching sort of like, about that time. And Ace
hugely underrated Doctor.
Oh, I think McCoy was fantastic.
I love him.
I've gone back and I've watched all of them multiple times. But he has that thing where he'll be sort of like, you'll think he's the clown, you'll think he's like the Troughton sort of clown, but then all of a sudden you think, oh, actually, there's a darkness to this.
Far more than just another Time Lord.
Yes.
What does he mean? And that's Andrew Cartmell's writing. The writing for McCoy's final seasons. It's a horror that it never carried on, because he had a plan.
Yeah,
Andrew Cartmell.
It feels like it does. It feels.
You can sense a build-up, but BBC pulled the plug.
Yeah, and I do always wonder, because and again, his transformation is such an anticlimax with the TV movie.
God. It's better than the regeneration between Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, though, which is Sylvester McCoy lying down with a curly yellow wig and his first face blurred out, because poor old Colin was sacked and wasn't allowed back on the set to film his own regeneration. But
it's interesting.
that simmering anger, as I say, sort of like,
Yeah.
you know, it feels to me like when they, Paul McGann is Paul McGann again. Interesting. I think I've never listened to the audio
I love
things,
him again. I think
but
he's
I've
great.
heard he's done some good stuff on the audio things and that. But you definitely feel like when I go back and watch McCoy, and then you learn about like the War Doctor and you know the what happened. You kind of go, yeah, all right, I'll buy that. I may not have bought it with say like some of the
I
earlier
mean, you can see the
Doctors.
war with the Daleks right there.
Yeah, Remembrance of the Daleks
Yeah, one
is
of the best serials of the show's history. Remembrance of the Daleks.
yeah.
Wonderful.
You feel that like, oh no, he would take these out,
Oh yeah.
quite happily. He
Oh
would
yeah.
do what it took to take these out. And I feel that simmering anger is there. But one of the people I feel that best did it, weirdly, is I mean, Capaldi's great, I think, but like
Yeah, love
Matt
him.
Smith I think
Yes.
has this
He
weird sort of
went right back to the
yeah.
classic Doctors. You could see so much Troughton in him.
Mm,
And then when he was mad, you'd see Pertwee and Hartnell in him. And when he was wacky, you'd see Tom Baker in him. But he was still completely and utterly Matt Smith.
mm,
And that's what elevated. I mean, I could watch his episodes, even though Stephen Moffat was a bit more hit and miss with his scripts than Russell T Davies was.
yeah.
But when they were good, they were great.
Yes.
And Matt Smith never let the side down. Ever.
No. Matt Smith's an interesting one because I think that each of the Doctors got a different kind of approach. And I think, Moffat, I agree with Moffat, like it's a bit hit and miss. Like they tried, where they tried different things and different approaches, but Matt Smith is consistent across them all, being who the Doctor is. He made bow ties cool again, and the silliness with the fez. But one of the things I really appreciate from him is exactly that ability to pendulum, where he can not just be not just be wacky, but there's like a whimsicalness to him. And you can have the whimsy in the action, where even in his first episodes at Fire Engine, where he's sort of like but then the end of that episode, and this is where I think I was Moffat's Matt Smith's introduction to me, and what is one of my favorite Doctor Who introduction episodes. Because it's got the whole silliness. It's got the silliness of like fish fingers and custard and
bad beans.
yeah, exactly. It's got some really silly lines and some good humor, and you can see that he's very physically able to do the slapstick and sort of thing. But then it ends with one of my favorite moments. It's gonna be goosebumps to think about it. Is like the big eye comes down and it says, "I am the Doctor."
Oh yes.
You know who I am, and it scans through, and it does the faces of like and you go bang, 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 bang,
magic,
and then it steps through as he's doing his bow tie, and you're like, oh yeah, like no, we've seen you be silly in that, but we also know that
the steel is still
right there. Yeah. And he was able to do that throughout, but never feel the arrogance of sort of the old we've talked about was always sort of, was kind of controlled enough that it felt good. So I think he was a great success as a Doctor.
Couldn't agree more, mate. I loved him.
Yeah, because I wanted to talk about this, but one of the ones we talked about Capaldi, and we are going through them in bits and pieces, I suppose. But because Capaldi is an interesting choice, I'd watched. Christ, it's gone out of my head now. The political satire comedy that he did, The Thick of It. Thank you.
Yeah. God,
so he does, and he's great in that. Like angry Scottish, like that patter. It's the Armando Nucci sort of comedy. It's fantastic. Really, really cutting. So when he was announced as the Doctor, there was kind of like
there was with newer fans, but those who know Peter Capaldi's history and the fact he used to write letters into Doctor Who magazine as a kid and was a founder member of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society and knew Doctor Who inside and out, to the point where if you've seen all of his episodes, there are several where he mimics previous Doctors. I mean, perfectly. There's one line where you don't even see him on screen, but you hear Tom Baker's Fourth Doctor, again for me along with Troughton, the greatest Doctor of them all. And it's like, whoa. And the Zygon two-parter.
Oh, the inversion and the invasion.
Speech, where he says, why don't people just sit down and talk? was like, to me, this is Doctor Who.
Yeah.
He is the man. And a lot of people, same with Colin Baker, same with William Hartnell, if you watch him for the first time, would think, who's this grumpy git? The Doctor's fun, jovial, yeah, let's have adventures. And what's this guy doing? But anyone who'd been watching from day one, or even going back to day one and coming on day 3 like I did, saw this is Doctor Who.
Yeah.
He is the Doctor.
It's one of those brave choices again, because I can imagine at the BBC,
extremely.
they were like, right, we had the
he's one of the youngest Doctors ever to one of the oldest.
Yes, exactly.
In one regeneration, yeah.
Because I can imagine they were like, right, we've had David Tennant, and he's gone on to do bigger things, and he's been a success, and he's a bit of a heartthrob. And now we've had Matt Smith, and he's been all energy, and he's introduced a much younger audience, and da da da. Who are we bringing in now? And it's always been like Ben. I forget now. There's always these young actors. The guy who played Q in the latest sort of Bond films.
Oh yeah. They always go younger. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're always like, oh, he's only 26. And like, right.
The other way around.
Yeah, and then Capaldi comes in. And like you say, he's very grumpy. I love the fact he's got like face and age blindness.
Yeah.
Like he clearly sort of, there's some great jokes where he sort of, to Clara, he's like, you look the same age as me. And she's like, I bloody don't,
I love the line where she goes, oh, I'm his carer. She goes, that's it. She's my carer. She cares, so I don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant.
And he is great. I think his energy is perfect.
I love him. He's probably my wife's favourite Doctor.
I think he's my favourite modern Doctor. Like he's, in as I've gone back through them and stuff. And the fact that he has a similar arc to like Hartnell.
Yeah, exactly that.
Where he starts really
He's
grumpy.
unrecognisable at this final episode from his first.
Well, I always think that the version that you meet in his first iteration, whilst good and fun and a bit more, isn't the.
But he's been through the bloody wars.
Oh yeah. But with him, and even though like Clara's been with Clara, as 11, I don't believe that the version. If what happens in the ones where he goes through his will, the sort of where he ends up he gets incinerated and then he gets rejuvenated and through that thing, and he's punching his way through that diamond hard wall through millions of years. I don't think the first season of Capaldi would do that for Clara and everything. Like I don't think he just wouldn't. I don't think. But you see that growth of this person, and almost like a healing where he can be. He understands that. Oh, I can be fun, and I can, I can now have sonic sunglasses, and I can do anything.
Play the electric guitar in a tank.
Yeah, I love the fact that there was, it's clearly Capaldi playing.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They were like, what can you do? And he's like, oh, you've got to be this, you'll be that. He's like, I can play electric guitar, and they were like, cool.
And well.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The bit where they're talking about the bootstrap pirate. That's one of my favorites. One of my favorite monologues. He does a lot of like monologues to screen. There's a bit of a fourth wall breaking.
Yeah.
Where he talks about the bootstrap paradox and Beethoven.
Yeah.
Conducting, and he's doing Beethoven on his guitar, and he's like, yeah, you're awesome. You're awesome.
Ledge.
Yeah. So yeah, no, he was great. I think Capaldi is definitely good, and some of his episodes are so fun, but also there's a sense to me of that original Doctor Who.
Yeah, I mean, do you feel? I've seen a lot of people disagree. Obviously, everyone's entitled their opinion, and I respect that. But for me, Stephen Moffat's seasons actually got better and better and better as he progressed.
Yes,
and I think by the end of Capaldi's final episode, it was back to being the best Who had ever been. And when you get someone who comes across, like you said, perfectly, as a grumpy git when you first meet him, turning to River Song and saying the line we've been wanting him to say from day one, when the penny drops and she realizes who he is, hello, sweetie. You just think, oh my God, this man can do no bloody wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I think it goes from instruments. I think his the season with Bill Potts, People like
Love her.
people go rail against it a little bit, and I'm like, no, it's great. And
I love her.
I think she's great. She's
And her arc, Jesus, tragic. I mean, come on.
yeah. Those
That was
last two episodes,
brave as hell.
those last two episodes.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think that that Moffat did, and was slipped there was what I was going to say.
Yeah.
One of the things that Moffat did, I think, I was talking about this before, that with like Tennant and Smith, the energy of the Doctor's up here, so everybody else has to be sort of like down a little bit, right? So you end up with like Rose and Martha, and they're all sort of a bit more straight. Less so, but say Donna Noble. I think Catherine Tate maybe she's up there and
Yeah.
wonderfully works as a counter to David Tennant. But they're always slightly lower. And then Capaldi's energy is able to be brought down enough that you can have other characters come in and do the comedy. So you can have like Matt Lucas as Nardal, who is wonderful, but also you can have Missy.
My favourite modern master.
Yeah.
Totally. Because I grew up with the original. I grew up with Roger Delgado. And then Anthony Ainley, they were the dark, steely, intelligent, worthy opponents of the Doctor. And all of a sudden, he was a mental case. And while John Sims played him brilliantly, as did Sacha Dhawan, I never quite got the bonkers master. So when she comes in and she's quirky, she's a little bit nuts, but she is smart as hell.
Yeah.
And an equal to Capaldi in every way. I thought, the master's back. And I love Michelle Gomez.
She's awesome.
Everything she does, everything she's in. So I'm one of the annoying buggers that as soon as she said her name was Missy, I said, that's the master. And Jack says, my missus says, what are you talking about? It's a woman. I said, I bet you any money Missy is short for mistress.
Yeah.
And because obviously she's female or looks female now or identifies as female now, she can't call herself the master. So she's the mistress.
Yeah.
And when I was right, I did dwell on it quite a lot.
ate out on that for a little while there. You're like, told you. You're right there, but yeah, Michelle Rodriguez. She's Michelle Gomez. Sorry,
I love her.
She's so smart with how she plays it, with how, because one of the things I find most interesting that's never been played out really before, because you sort of get a hint of it with John Sim, but he's too bonkers and you know, and like you say, he gets driven mad and stuff. But the thing I love between Missy and Capaldi's Doctor is that there's a legacy and a friendship and a history.
It's a definite love-hate relationship that you can feel has been going forever.
For like millennia.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that like when it's his last will and testament, the disc that gets sent out before the Doctor's due to die.
So good.
And Clara goes to take it. And she's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
That's not for you. That's for me. You know, it's so good. And they bounce off each other so well. But I think Moffat, you're right. I think Moffat gets stronger and stronger. But he does where I think Davis balances really well structured story and escalates, which is why I'm sort of excited at the moment for Doctor Who.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think Moffat was more able to balance tragedy and you know and bring those things in.
Human drama as well.
Human drama, yeah. Like you know the end result of Danny Pink and, as you said, Bill Potts and these characters that you grow to love, and you're like, he's just going to keep pulling them away from you.
No one was safe. It was like Game of Thrones meets Doctor Who.
Yeah. Continuing those swings. Capaldi ends, and you know, again, I love his last episode where he sort of has to and he meets his earliest self.
So good.
Which is a great episode. I've watched that a couple of times. I've gone by that a few times. And then we get Jodie Whittaker. And a lot of controversy around Jodie and her seasons. And, you know...
I think she was hard done by.
Oh.
I really do, because as the Doctor, I loved her.
Mm.
She had all the nuances. She could be vulnerable. She could be frighteningly intelligent. She had the energy. She could stare you down and say, not today. But Chris Chibnall's scripts, until the final episodes, were so up and down that I felt like I was back in the John Nathan Turner era of the 80s, where you just did not know whether you were going to get an absolutely dreadful episode or an absolutely amazing episode from one week to the next. But I will say that Jodie herself and all her companions, I loved. They were great, and that's what I tried to stick by. And her final season was good.
A final season is stronger than the others.
Yeah.
Again, it sort of sorts itself out. Not, we'll talk about maybe the timeless child thing, but the thing with Jodie is, I think, like, her first episode is good. It's cracking.
Very strong. Very strong.
It's a really strong introduction. Like, and I think she's got as you said, the energy. And let's be clear, like, Jodie Whittaker is not shy. She's not a new actress. She's not. This is not a
hugely talented actress. Award-winning, hugely talented actress.
Exactly, like, number of dramas. She'd worked with Chibnall obviously on Broadchurch, so she's not inexperienced. She's incredibly talented, and I do really like her as the Doctor. And there are, even in some of the worst episodes, there are flashes when I'm like,
she has pure brilliance in some of them, even the bad ones. Yeah.
You are really good, and I'm really enjoying this. But the episodes are wonky, and you say you like the companions. I do sort of individually, but I felt like there was just
too many. But then if you watch any of the first Doctor episodes, there was times when he had 3-4 companions as well. It was like...
And I'm not a fan of those either.
But that was because Hartnell was so old and tired and losing his memory that they did most of the heavy lifting.
Yes.
But Jodie didn't need that.
No.
Which is why at the end, when it was just her and...
Yaz.
Oh my God, I forget her name. Yaz, yeah.
Yeah. When it's stripped
it was
down,
much better.
Exactly. I feel exactly the same. I think when it feels it's stripped down, it feels much more... much stronger, because I think she gets to shine in it. One of the things, they did some of the specials. I might for one day go back and watch the whole run. But one of the things I feel with Jodie Whittaker is, I know that, like, Tennant has now said, retired the character, he's done, I'm aged out, kind of thing. Capaldi said the same, sort of like, I'm too old, and it's, it was great, but it's done. Eccleston, obviously, we've said, has his foibles.
He's doing the audios now, so...
Yeah, maybe one day, but
he's doing them. He's doing them.
Yeah, well, no, he's doing the audios, but what I'm saying is, I don't think he'll ever appear on screen as the Doctor ever again.
He won't. Not with Russell T Davies in charge, anyway.
No. But the only Doctor I can sort of see, and I'm wondering, I do wonder if we ever get this thing, and it's the Whoniverse. There could be, we've got the money and stuff. I do go, I wouldn't mind seeing Jodie Whittaker under the sort of the tutelage of Russell T Davies
and Matt Smith.
Yeah. I'd be fascinated to see, like, go on, do a Doctor crossover where you could have, and give them that. I think it'd be really interesting. So yeah, that but I think she does fine.
Agreed. Yeah.
And her Doctor, I forget the guy's name now. The Master, sorry, her Master.
Sacha Dhawan.
Thank you. He was another one where it was like, it was very up and down.
Yeah. And far too nutty.
Yeah.
For me, the Master's a genius, not a mental case.
Yeah, they tried to, they lean into like, he's a psychopath, like he's a crazy person. And it's, yeah.
I mean, he played it brilliantly because he's a fantastic actor. I mean, you'd hardly recognise him as playing the director of the first Doctor Who serial in the docudrama of Adventure in Time and Space. And it's the same guy. So,
yeah. Well, that was the director. I think that was, again, this Chibnall going, this is what we want to do.
Yeah. Totally.
And it didn't kind of work. But, yeah. But yeah, what were your thoughts? And you obviously, we've gone through, we're actually up to the more modern.
Yeah.
So Jodie leaves. We'd known that Ncuti Gatwa had been cast. We'd already seen pictures of him on set in costume, running around with Millie Gibson. So we knew that was coming. And then the last episode of Jodie Whittaker's season comes. She's on the cliff's edge, and she says like, "Tag, you're it," and she regenerates
Turns
into
into David Tennant.
David Tennant. What,
I mean, the
what were
thing
your
for
thoughts?
me was because she'd found out her history
Yeah.
that she might degenerate and go back to an early reincarnation.
Mm.
But when Russell says, no, so this is the 14th Doctor,
Mm.
but he's the 14th Doctor for a reason, I thought 2 words, Donna Noble.
Mm.
And again, I was right. So I wasn't surprised as most viewers because, as you know, I'm an ultra nerd.
Yeah.
And had an inkling about what was happening already. But it was still a major surprise to see her not only turn into David Tennant, but to see her costume regenerate as well. Because that hadn't happened since William Hartnell into Patrick Troughton.
Yeah.
I mean, could you imagine if John Pertwee'd walked out in a suit 3 sizes too small for him, wearing Patrick Troughton's clothing? That would have been bloody hilarious. But there's little things like that surprise me, and the bi-generation into Ncuti Gatwa. But the fact that this Doctor can go off and have a life now does still scare me a little bit, because I don't know if you remember Colin Baker's final season, The Trial of the Time Lord. He's introduced to a villain called the Valeyard, who is a future incarnation of himself between his 12th and final regeneration, which is when the human Doctor takes over before Matt Smith's final Doctor and the regenerations have run out. So is that Doctor on Pete Tyler's world with Rose? We know he can't regenerate. We know he's part human.
Yeah.
But there's still Time Lord DNA there. Will he age more slowly? Because we know that Time Lords do age more slowly.
Yeah, very slowly. Yeah.
Because when the Master aged him, he was thousands of years old, but he still looked like a guy in his 90s.
Yeah.
Perhaps he was wrinkled,
Yeah.
but he was still... So does this guy lose Rose, his children and grandchildren, and in his rage at losing the people he loves, find a way to regenerate into the Valeyard, and that's who we see in the Trial of the Time Lord? But now we've got another 10th Doctor and the 14th Doctor, but he's the one a couple of stages after the last regeneration. I mean, I don't know, because I'm always trying to write these stories and think, when's he coming? How's he doing it? Where's he going to come about? So that was part of my thinking as well. I was like, what's Russell doing? But of course, it was to save the one character everyone was heartbroken by, because losing her memory and losing her adventure with the Doctor was almost worse than killing her for me.
Oh, those episodes and that were those specials with Tennant and the wonderful Bernard Cribbins.
Love that man.
Jesus, like that final thing. He was This is the thing, wasn't it? Like he gave you these characters, and Donna's getting married and sort of thing, and you just have sort of he turns around and salutes him and stuff. And it's just Tennant stood there in the rain. Iconic, like really, it's not just a daft sci-fi show. That show broke people's hearts.
Really deep.
I will say though, and this is when they brought her back, I was chuffed, because I do like Catherine Tate, and I was glad they brought Donna Noble back to resolve this, or at least trying to have some form of resolution. And I like the idea when they're trying to keep her away from him, and it's all running around. It's all good fun. And she's now got this daughter, and it's all sort of, whatever, right? And you've got this idea that, well, she's had a child, then the Doctor, the Dr. Donna has been passed on and stuff.
The energy that's in her that could kill her, which no human being can contain, was passed down to her daughter Rose.
Yeah.
Which is why it's just genius writing. Did Russell have that planned? Or was that something he wrote in later?
I think he wrote that in later. I think
it was genius.
Yeah, because I think he wanted to end on a tragedy. I think that was always the idea. Now the idea is good, and I like that it passes down and sort of like just dilutes it a bit. But there was one bit when they're like, "Oh, we can just shake it off at the very end," and I was like, "No." That
was a little bit too easy. I think they needed to force it out of themselves a bit, but I do agree with that.
It needed to feel a bit like they had
a sacrifice.
Or you said forced it. Like it had to be something that
She was alien to them. Yeah.
It may not come at a cost of like a big sacrifice, but it had to feel painful or something. To shake it off in the way they did, I was like, oh, that just feels like
Too happy, joy.
yeah. And I'm like, that doesn't feel right for the Doctor we've had,
And especially for the tragedy we left her with.
Yeah,
it's like a bit of an anticlimax.
Yeah, so I would say that was my disappointment with that. I enjoyed the rest of the episode. There's some of the bits I think all of a sudden that your sonic screwdriver can create bulletproof force field shields. Wasn't entirely keen on that, but fine. But those 60th anniversary specials, because they're always special, they're big. What were your thoughts then on the three, those big three?
I thought they were great fun, and each of them had great moments. But to me, the return of the Celestial Toymaker and him being wacky and mental, where again the original played by Michael Gough, who's Alfred in the Tim Burton and Joel Schumacher Batman films, felt to me a bit more realistic because of how the Doctor defeated him. And again, these entities are older than Time Lords, more powerful than Time Lords, and the fact Russell's brought them back, even though Celestial Toymaker doesn't exist in its entirety in the vaults, and that's the next one they're animating, was extremely brave. But he'd done that already with the Macra. The Macra Terror hadn't been restored at the point where David Tennant met them in Gridlock. So I just love the fact that there's so many nods and tips of the hat to the classic series. So I love those moments. But remember, these again are going to be someone's first Doctor Who episodes. So while I thought they were a bit fun, camp, joy, that's how you get new viewers. Particularly, and people forget this, primarily Doctor Who is a show for kids.
Yeah.
And it's only old farts like us, I mean, more me than you, let's be fair, who expected the show to grow up with them. And Russell T Davies manages to pull that balancing act of making it a kids' show, but having enough there for the old farts to keep it interesting.
Yes.
But I can let go some of the campiness. I mean, let's be honest, Space Babies was ridiculous.
Yes.
But hilarious.
I may edge on the other side of that one.
I loved it. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it was silly. Very silly, but huge fun. The next episode I thought was fantastic. It could have been written for me. Because my obsessions, as you know, are comic books, Doctor Who, and the Beatles. So the fact that the Beatles saved the day, it's a story about the power of music. And that's something all of us at Comics in Motion are huge fictionalized. Music is like part of our DNA. That episode felt like it was written for me, even though, again, it was high camp, high action. The villain was fantastic.
Yes.
James Monsoon, I salute you. Amazing. But then we get the Stephen Moffat episode, boom. And I love the way that back in the 60s and 70s, it would have been the companion stepping on the landmine and the Doctor saving her. It was the Doctor. And again, it was a Talking Heads episode. It was all about conversation and communication. And yet it was a gripping piece of drama.
Yeah.
And I thought, Doctor Who's back.
And it had the typical Moffat tragedy as well.
Yeah.
Like it was going to pull at your heartstrings and you're like, oh man, this is...
So many dead people in one episode.
Yeah. Cast of only 5, most of them dead.
Yeah.
Now, one of the things I find interesting about the new Gatwa years, or this introduction, I love the 60th anniversary. Really enjoyed. I think the middle episode in particular on the spaceship, with the weird on the outskirts of space,
horrifying things,
amazing.
Especially when they mimicked the Doctor and
and he's like, I think my arms are too long, and it's sort of like all deformed. It was really creepy, like really well done, and I think the money was well spent on that episode. And I think it balanced out the 60th anniversary episodes really well, where you have like the Meep, and stuff, and it was all like that was.
Oh, that made me so happy though. Having read the old Fourth Doctor comics, I've still got them.
Is it in those episodes?
Yeah. That the Meep story was a Fourth Doctor comic book story from 81, I believe, and they adapted it.
Cool. So that's awesome.
The Meep's virtually identical.
Yeah.
The story's virtually identical.
So they brought them out. Then they have this creepy episode, which I thought was really cool, and they were in it. But it echoes already what's coming.
Yeah.
Like it keeps building, and this is that Russell T Davies thing, isn't
Completely.
it? Like, okay, I'm going to keep
Breadcrumbs
laying the
season,
breadcrumbs.
yeah.
Yeah. and then you get Neil Patrick Harris, who blasts it and blows it away.
Totally.
And the whole scene of him doing the dancing whilst
amazing.
Just amazing. Spice Girls is fantastic. Like, it's, as you said, high camp, high silliness, but it worked.
Huge fun.
But I loved the fact that, and I'm going to make a comparison in a minute, but it felt to me like there's still that lethality in the silliness. Like, he turns two guys into like balloons, like bump, and you're like, oh, they're not coming back. Like, the doctor says, I can't get those back. Like, they're dead. Like, there's you're still like, oh, this is funny to him, but like, people are still gonna die.
Yeah.
And so it worked well. And I think with Ncuti Gatwa, I think, I thought the Christmas episode was good fun, and he sort of, good introduction to the characters, pulled all the right heartstrings. Space Babies to me felt like a modern Red Dwarf episode, like a season 9, 10 kind of Red Dwarf episode, where I was like, yeah, I'd accept this,
but with a much better budget.
Yeah, with a much better, most definitely. With not so much a Dave budget, but I don't know. It was fine, but I don't know. I just like the boogeyman thing, and it looked like the Vindaloo monster from series 4 of Red Dwarf, and then the nappy with the methane thing. I was just like, yeah, okay. This is as you said.
Take it as what it is, exactly.
But that was where
it's
I was
not
like,
trying to be high art. It's fun.
No, but this was where I rolled my eyes at it, and I realized, like, as you said, I was like, this episode's not for me. I'm a 42-year-old man, and this is not for me. And then you get the next one, and you're like, oh, this is sinister and kind of dark and weird and everything, and I'm all in again.
Deep messages, deep messages. If we can't create, we destroy.
Yes,
and that's just fantastic.
And you said Jinx Monsoon was a fantastic,
incredible.
Yeah, did a fantastic performance to sort of. And,
we need to see her again
to build. Oh, I think she'll be back. Well, you saw the young boy that acts as her, almost like her Silver Surfer.
Again. Yeah,
was
her herald.
Her herald was seen again. So yeah, she'll be back. The Boom, I thought was an excellent episode. And
73 yards was fantastic.
Well, you know me and my sort of like folk horror, so I was going like, oh, this is all about.
That's again my Doctor Who. That's right back to Pertwee and the Demons.
Yeah, that's it. And I was like, this is all like Arthur Mackin, M.R. James, a dash of Nigel Neal going on in there. Like, I was all over that. Yeah, I was all over it. I was like, that was excellent.
So you've got a village pub with sinister locals. I'm sold. I'm in 100%.
That scene where they all start getting worried, and then they're like, what do you mean?
And they're all taking the piss.
Yeah. I thought it was brilliant. Really well done. And so I think this new era, it feels like a new era. It feels fresh. It feels sort of like an elevation of a shift. But still Doctor
Who.
Time
when it's vintage Doctor Who. Yeah.
The thing I haven't seen yet, and I'm interested to, and I'm wondering how it's going to be. Because one of the things we talked about with let's say with New Who, we're now in New Who. Yeah, we said about there was that simmering rage, that simmering anger that sat underneath it, that steeliness that we knew existed. You saw it in there's some early like Pertwee and McCoy and Davison even at times. You knew that existed. That's that anger and that sort of you'll push me so far and then you won't.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Basically, run.
Yes, exactly. That thing of like, what I will happily do. I know that Gatwa can do that. I've got no doubt about that.
I don't think there's anything that guy can't do. I mean, the fact he's the only Doctor in the series history to physically cry.
Yes.
Yeah. Again, is massive. But they did say, Russell Davies did say that Tennant took that rage with him, but the Doctor needs that with a massive threat. Otherwise, he's not that solid character that we know him to be.
He's the wall. He's the wall that does not.
Yeah. He's Hadrian's wall against the Romans.
Exactly.
And I am just dying to see. What or who it is
that pushes him
brings that out of him. And it's got to be the Eternals. It's got to be the Toymaker and the Maestro's ilk, because they are beings vastly more intelligent, more powerful, and more dangerous than he is. So he's going to have to bring out that steel. I don't know, but just the line, "The one who waits is coming." I'm hopeful.
Yeah. Oh no, I don't think Russell T will let us down. I thought, in Davies I trust, but I'm waiting for that. Like
Yeah,
I'm
so am
hoping
I.
for there's a turn
So am I.
coming where there's going to be like, oh, I've run and I've joked, but now like this is where things stop. So I'll be interested to see how it goes. I am very very
exactly
interested.
that.
Yeah, no, it's a fascinating, and I'm so glad they've sort of taken this turn because it feels like it's been rejuvenated. It feels like it's got a different energy, and it needed it. It felt like it was time to do this.
Yeah.
But as you said, it still feels like
Doctor
Who. One thing I would say, I feel like since the 60th anniversary episodes, because there's a note of even Kate Lethbridge Stewart sort of said it a little bit with the unit coming in the 73 yards, was the acknowledgement of, oh, we're sort of like we're all sort of we're all kitted up to deal with extraterrestrials and supernatural, which feels that it's definitely it's leaning into it. And this is not a derogatory to say this way, but for me, it feels like with the randomness or with the sort of the weirdness, but also like the campness and stuff, it feels like Doom Patrol.
Well, that's one of my favourite TV shows of all time.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like not in a bad
and Michelle
way.
Gomez. There you got a connection too.
Yeah. So not in a bad way, but I'm definitely I get that feel, and I'm like, and I do wonder
what
if
is happening. Yeah.
We want to elevate this for British audiences or for American audiences. It's gone through Disney money and Disney distribution,
and you can see it in every scene.
Yes.
Doctor Who's never had so much money thrown at it, and you can see it.
Oh yeah, it's on the screen. A lot of the time, it's on the screen, and the sets, like the new TARDIS and that, is ace.
I mean, did you know? I mean, this blew my bloody mind. Do you watch Doctor Who Unleashed after every episode?
No, I don't. No.
Oh, please. I
should do.
Stephen Moffat has never, ever, even in his Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi years, filmed in a quarry. He refuses. He has the sets built. So that Boom episode isn't a quarry. That isn't real stone. That's not a landscape in the middle of a rocky crevice. It's a set.
Yeah.
With a LED AMOLED backdrop that moves. Oh,
one of those things.
Actors. Yeah.
Oh, like the things they use for the Mandalorian and all that kind of jazz.
Yeah. Damn if you'd get that anytime before 2024.
Oh, yeah.
Watch Doctor Who Unleashed. It's fantastic.
I'll have a look at that.
Yeah.
But to go into that sort of thing, we're saying, that Doom Patrol comparison stuff, which I do think, I definitely feel, not in a bad way, but it's definitely there. Yeah. And you've said about the futures, about the Celestials and that coming, which I think allows the Celestials. Because I mean, like, what Maestro was literally using musical notes to tie people up. You got to allow for that weirdness. But there's the character the name of the actress I forget right now, but she's appeared in like every episode. And most recently in 73 Yards, and Ruby Sunday was like, "Have we met before?" Like, and she was like, "Oh, I don't think so, my dear. I don't think so, love." That feels like obviously that's everyone's speculating around that. You've then got the neighbour that
Anita Dobson's Mrs.
Anita
Flood.
Dobson, yeah.
I need to know what's going on there.
Who's literally sort of
really need to know
broke the fourth wall and was like, "That looks like a TARDIS," and you're like, "Hang on, what?" So who you've said about the person, the one that waits, but that I don't think that's the only thing. Like, there's more.
We're going to get a ton of stuff thrown at us, and that's going to be brand new stuff, and I think some homage for the older, long-standing viewers as well. And you won't see the difference because that's the thing he did brilliant with the Celestial Toymaker is no one can actually see those episodes. But you don't care because it's so well done, so well explained. You don't have to.
It sets it all up. Let's go into speculation then. Before we sort of wrap up, because we're going to the future. So, what is your in a nutshell? What is your hope and speculation then for the future?
Well, the fact he's once again the last of the Time Lords, I think liberates the character a little bit, and the one thing Gallifrey and the Time Lords did was sometimes anchor the Doctor too much and lead his decisions and what he decided and where he went. The fact he's now free, a lot of his anger and rage his entire life has gone with the David Tennant Doctor, that he's an adventurer again, leads me to think that, again, this story can go back to being what it was, different every episode, a horror one week, a comedy the next, a musical the next, and that has me very excited. But, like you say, breadcrumbs are being left. And Russell T Davies does this better than almost anybody, on TV at least, of characters being introduced, lines being said, that you just know that episode 8 is going to blow our minds.
Yeah.
That, honestly, I think the only word I can use is excited. Because I don't think that Shooty, Millie, or Russell will let us down.
No. Well, Millie's not around for she's leaving.
No, she is. People got it all wrong. The new
Ah.
companion is joining them in season 2.
Ah, so
No one
it's an
said she was
expansion.
leaving.
Ah,
Yes.
okay. Interesting. That would be interesting.
And it's the girl from Boom.
Boom. As a not that same character though, but
Completely different character and unrecognisable.
Yeah, so that'd be interesting.
Or will there be a link a la Clara?
Well, that's what
you never know with
that
Russell T Davies.
No, that was what I was thinking. Like it could be in her timeline. It could be, one of her ancestors or descendants. Yeah, so for me, I think you're right. I completely agree. I think we're leading up to quite a big finale. I'm gonna throw some out there though. I don't think he's gonna tie them all up in episode 8. I don't think we're
Christmas special.
Well, I don't even think that. I think we're going to get more because the thing that I keep thinking about is the big title that now comes up is the Whoniverse, and this is the other thing that Davies is very, very good at. Like he gave us
Spin-offs.
He gave us Torchwood, he gave us Sarah Jane Chronicles. It's all those kinds of things.
Both of which were amazing.
Oh yeah, I loved. They were fantastic and it worked really well. He's clearly heading in that direction, and I feel like he's playing a much longer game. But he's like, oh no, I'm not going to wrap this up at the end of season 1. Maybe the end of season 2. So I think we're going to get the big story's going to finish, or at least we're going to have something at the end of this. But I think we're still going to have lots of things to go. And I think, we're not going to get the first spin-off. I don't think we're going to get the first spin-off yet. But I think we're going to move up to something. The thing that I keep thinking of is there a big end game for this? And this is obviously, Disney have invested in this for a purpose, and they're obviously seeing franchise and all this other stuff. And the only thing I keep thinking in my head, and I'm happy to be wrong, is The Mandalorian. So the only thing I keep thinking about with it, we started on a
Great
stream.
minds think alike.
Yeah, well, we started as a TV show, and we've added in these extra characters, movie. Yeah, I'm telling you, I'm wondering if we're heading towards the first feature. No, not the first feature. I apologize.
Great minds think alike.
Yeah. Is that what you're thinking?
Very similar. Because I'm expecting a huge bang at the end of episode 8.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting the story to end. I'm expecting an American-style season-end cliffhanger, which is going to annoy the hell out of everybody.
Yeah.
Because let's remember, when Russell started, and throughout the Stephen Moffat era, Doctor Who ran for 13, 14 episodes a year. This is just 8. So this is season 1, half of it.
Yeah.
So it's going to continue to season 2. Yes, I see spin-offs. Yes, I see this building because, again, with the money they're throwing at this show, every episode almost feels like a movie. And I think that now is the time because Doctor Who did lose viewers between Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall.
Yeah.
And this is the prime opportunity for Russell T Davies to trap lightning in a bottle for a second time and get the show back to where it was. And it started. The first 4 episodes are almost a perfect return to the Davies' second golden age. For me, the Philip Hinchcliffe is the first golden age, the Tom Baker early years. But anyway, I digress. So yeah, I agree with you. This is leading to huge things, and I don't see a movie not being one of them. Yeah.
And I would wonder, I don't know when it'll be, but I can imagine there was a sit down when the cast were sat there. here's your contracts. You know, I can imagine that those contracts are now slightly different to how they were for, say, you know, Tennant, Smith, Capaldi, and Whitaker. Where now it's like, okay, you're tied in to do this show, and then there may be, or you know, options for film, whatever it may be. And yeah, you know, I agree. I think that there's no reason.
And I'd love it.
Yeah. Oh God. Yeah.
I'd watch the living bejesus out of a big screen Doctor Who movie, mate. I mean, I even love the '60s ones with
Peter Cushing.
Peter Cushing. Brilliant. I love them. The Technicolor alone, just those colours.
I'm always a fan of. I love 50s and 60s
them.
films when they have those colours. Yeah, it feels to me like that there is something coming, and we have no idea. Like there's I can imagine there's a whole host of things that they've got, like, you know, that almost like phase one of Marvel, where they were like, you know, I know it was a bit spread out, but they were like, no, we've got this planned out and we know what we're heading for, and if it works, then we'll go to the next bit and then the next bit, and it feels
it all went downhill from there. Eh?
Yeah. It's a bit rocky, but I can imagine that that's what they're going. They've said,
completely.
And I would not be surprised in the slightest if there was in a room at some point in either in Hollywood or in Bad Wolf Studios in somewhere where a certain Mr. Davis and a certain Mr. Feige didn't have a conversation.
Well, especially now that a lot of it is under the Disney umbrella. It's a BBC production.
Yeah.
And in this country, it's not on Disney Plus, it's on BBC iPlayer.
Yeah.
But everywhere else in the world,
it's on
Disney Plus.
It is.
And while people say, oh my God, they're going to ruin it like they did Star Wars and like they did the Marvel films, to me is, well, if they keep throwing money at it and let Russell T Davies, the showrunner, run the show, I got no problem.
Yeah, I agree.
It's if they put their
people
in, that then I'll be. But so far, 4 episodes in, this is Doctor Who.
Yeah, I think so.
It's not Disney's version of Doctor Who, it's Doctor Who.
Yeah. And it's a step up, as you said, both production-wise and other things, like taking chances.
Production-wise, it's mind-blowing.
It is. And I think they're taking chances, and I think that's good. So, yeah, no, I agree. I think the future is hopefully bright for Doctor Who. And, you know, we'll all be sat around a little bit grayer, a little bit older, and we'll be enjoying the 70th anniversary.
I'll be watching it with my grandchild on my knee, and that'll make me the happiest man on earth.
Yeah, and I'm sure it'll happen.
And then they run away and hide behind the sofa like I did when I was a kid.
And as always, I think that's been, again, like you said, the balance of joy and fear that this show sort of instills is always, you know, its achievement, I think, is one of those things. The fact that it is one that people go, oh, I used to hide behind the sofa to hide away from the Cybermen or the Daleks, or, you know, even some of the more recent ones. Even I gotta say, some of my favorite characters went. One of my favorite characters of the entire sort of Capaldi run is when he goes back to Victorian England. When he's first in, you know, I think it was during Matt Smith as well.
Yeah.
The Sontaran.
From Lady Vastra and her girlfriend. Yeah, I love them.
And I was always like, man, where's that spin-off? Like, that would have been ace.
Well, the fact that Moffat's writing for the show again, and those are his creations and his babies, if that's one of the spin-offs, again, BBC, take my money. I'll watch the shit out of that.
Oh, I'd watch that, yeah. What was he called then?
The
Sontaran. I forget his name now.
Strax.
He was amazing.
I love him.
Such a great character.
Quiet boy.
Yes.
I'm a girl. What's the difference?
Such a fun character. Yeah, so I am. I'm, you know, and I think, you know, we'll see more. The comics are going strong through Titan, and the audio dramas are doing incredibly well, and expanding the lore and all this other stuff. And you know,
books are being published again.
They're doing the books. Well, not only the books, they're doing the novelizations of the episodes. They're doing the
Target novelizations that I grew up with. That's what I was reading.
Yeah,
that and old 60s comics before I'd seen a single episode. So that makes me happy. I'm a bookworm.
I've not got loads. I've probably got 6 or 7 of those kicking around in my novelization library up in the attic. So there's those old episode ones are fantastic. They're so good.
Most of them are better than the actual episodes, especially 5 Doctors.
Well, that's because they had no budget constraints and they could do the bits and pieces. And that's kind of like what I like about novelizations often is when you're like, oh yeah, this reads a lot better than what was on screen.
Oh yeah,
Um,
big stuff.
so yes. Anyway, we shall start to wrap up there. I think we could go on, but this has
But
been.
we need to do another episode because we didn't talk anywhere near enough about Tom Baker.
We should come back. We should do a Tom Baker dedicated episode. Yeah, we can do some more. But anyway, as we do wrap up, it is late, and we have other things to do. But
It's been
Steve,
a joy, mate.
it's been amazing as always. This is the thing with you. We probably could go on for hours, and we'd go on for the different. The things always in my head is we talk about obviously it's with Disney, but like technically, Doctor Who does exist in the Marvel universe, or at least in the comic world. He met with
The Transformers, Death's Head,
Death's Head.
like Spider-Man. Yeah,
Death's Head is what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
Who's in the so technically he's in there. And yeah, all those other crossovers. The one I've banged on about this, and you may have heard me say this on sort of stories at times. Is I don't understand. It makes no sense to me how the BBC owned Doctor Who. Time travel, science fiction, versatile show. They also owned Red Dwarf. And never shall the two meet in any sort of real
that's
substantial
kind of
way.
tragic.
It is, isn't it? It's absolutely the fact that never happened.
The fact that this is very Arthur Dent. He was a lovely chap. In that way, he even crosses over with Hitchhiker's Guide. The fact that it hasn't crossed over with Red Dwarf is very sad.
The fact that even like Bernard Quatermass has been mentioned several times throughout throughout Doctor Who, and like you say, the fact that those two could never, even in comic form, I would read the hell out of that comic.
Oh, absolutely.
Be amazing. It should happen. Red Dwarf's got three final episodes coming. We're getting New Who. It should just be final thing. We shall see.
Come on, Grant Naylor, Russell T Davis.
Yeah.
Listen to your fans, mate.
Seriously, I'll write it. I'll pay for it. We'll make it do it on Kickstarter. It will get funded. Yes.
I'm there, mate. Sold.
Fantastic. Oh, yeah, Steve, before we do go, where can people find you and the things that you do?
Oh, well, now I'm back and I can speak again.
Yes.
I'm back on the podcast wagon, the DC Comics News podcast, and I Am the Night are back in full swing. Look out for those on the DC Comics News Podcast Network. I've got a brand new show called Detective Comments coming out on the Fantastic Universes feed, where we will talk about everything, and I do mean everything to do with Batman. But the easiest way to catch me is just type Steve J. Ray into Google, and it'll take you to all my news, reviews, features, and interviews, podcasts across Fantastic Universes, DC Comics News, Dark Knight News, and the wonderful Comics in Motion. I'll see you there. Oh, and I've often excrete on X, because you can't tweet on Twitter anymore, at lstevo, EL_STEEVO.
I love that. Excrete. I've never thought it before. That's it. I shall be excreting on X. Yes, that's wonderful. Yeah, I'll actually put some of the links down there for sort of Dark Knight News and all those other bits and pieces.
Thank you, brother.
People can find things. But yeah, no, it's been wonderful. Thank you very much for coming on.
Pleasure. Anytime.
No, well, now you are back in the swing.
Any wibbly wobbly time you want me, mate.
Yeah. Well, there'll be other things. We do need to talk about more stuff. We need to talk about. There's some more sort of work being done on. We've got Rogue Trooper coming out.
Oh, I can't bloody wait.
Next year. And yeah, Button Man is being turned into a film.
Stop it, really?
Yep. They sold the
did
rights.
not know that. Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Got announced 2 weeks ago.
Ooh.
2 weeks or so ago. Yeah, so Button Man and just, I don't know, on the inside track, there may be at least 1 or 2 more announcements, maybe before the end of the year is the word. So we shall see. So there might be some 2000 AD character talking as well.
I'm there.
We'll definitely do Rogue Trooper. Anyway, yes, ladies and gentlemen, if you like what we're doing, please go leave a review and then check out our Patreon, patreon.com/20cg media. So much stuff on there. All that stuff from stories out of time and space, my 30-minute thoughts, trekking through the Twilight Zone, all those over the different bits and pieces. Link down below. Go check them out. But for now, Steve, thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Lovely to talk to you.
It's been fantastic. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We'll see you again soon.